What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're talking about should WoW players just give up on WoW and land in Final Fantasy XIV, the pros, the cons, and everything in between. But first, Chris, we got a great sponsor for today's post. Why don't you tell them about it?
Guys, today's video is brought to you by Audible. Now, Audible, I am finishing up books 1 and 2 of the Theft of Swords series, and we'll be moving on to The Rise of Empire by Michael J. Sullivan, including books 3 and 4, narrated by the fantastic Tim Gerard Reynolds. And it's an absolute blast to listen to, and honestly makes me look forward to as the grass grows a little bit faster as we move into the summer months, so that I can spend more time mowing and listening to these books. Audible is an incredible platform with so much more than just books and so much to offer. If you have not tried it, your first 30 days are free on them. I encourage you to visit audible.com/worktogame or text worktogame to 500-500 to get started.
And thanks to Audible for sponsoring today's video. Incredible content, guys. I've been listening to The Lord of the Rings on Audible. In fact, if you ever see any screenshots from when I do guides, you'll see Audible right there pinned in my start bar. I've been using that for years.
Those ints talk so slow on the audiobook. Have you made it to that point?
Yeah.
The ints are so slow.
But again, like, I love the service, guys. If you haven't checked out Audible, use the link, use the code. It helps support the channel, it supports the content, but if nothing else, like, it's just fantastic. Great service if you travel or if you're locked at home for a year. I don't know. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into the subject, because on stream today, Chris was talking about this concept, and he brought up an interesting point. Chris, I'll let you go ahead and kind of give the general synopsis of the point that you were making, because I thought it was really interesting, and that's why we're making today's post.
So the first thing is that these are games that have an initial content cycle every 2 years that is meant to be a full functioned, free form game. Gives you a chance to level to a new cap, get a bunch of new quest lines, unlocks a ton of new features and cosmetics. And then after that, they are continually supported by a series of patches over a 2-year cycle in trade for a monthly subscription. That is how WoW and Final Fantasy XIV function. They both function on nearly identical subscription costs, nearly identical expansion costs. And so effectively, it's the same value proposition. And if you just write down all the things these games have at a base level, they actually have a very similar feature list. They get to them differently, they execute them a little differently, but they are basically trying to solve the same shopping list. They're just getting there differently. World of Warcraft released last November. Last December 8th, we released patch 5.4 in Final Fantasy XIV. We then got patch 5.45, which was a fully loaded patch. We moved into patch 5.5 just a few short weeks ago. We are moving into patch 5.55, estimated around the end of this May, after a large fan event, and we are racing towards a full featured expansion this fall. World of Warcraft in that time has released a half patch.
Oh, I was going to say nothing.
That's it. They've released a half patch. 9.1 is the first patch that is meant to address many of the concerns with Shadowlands. Shadowlands was a good full-featured initial serving, but due to limited feedback in the PTR and things like that, it's never going to be perfect. And the chance to fix that is with 9.1, 9.2, and so on, and continually address it. That patch just hasn't come yet. There's estimates that that's going to be May, June, July. Great. You push it too far back, it's now racing with a full featured expansion from Final Fantasy. So the question starts to be, is Shadowlands worth the purchase price? Yes. Somebody who's never played WoW before, is there enough content on the bone from 15 years of being around to play the game? Absolutely. But to existing players who play because they want raid content, existing players who want a gear grind, existing players who want more lore, existing players who want to grind new cosmetics and have run out of ones they want in WoW, I am running out of things that you could be paying to get access to because they're not adding more and you're continuing to give them money.
So what would be any kind of negative drawback to essentially another mass exodus from WoW into Final Fantasy XIV?
So the advantages to continuing to pay are that if you like doing dailies, they give a reward, and those rewards are cumulative. The more days you show up, it really does add up. It's not about showing up once or twice. It's about showing up continuously. Weekly lockouts for things like old mounts, you have to try them multiple times. Seasonal events are the very same thing. You miss those, you miss those. Right now, they're giving away like a sloth pet. You miss that, it's gone forever. So there are these retention mechanics in place that penalize you for stepping out of a game. Final Fantasy XIV has them too, especially if you're a homeowner. And
especially, yeah.
Both games, there is a FOMO there where you might miss out. But assuming you don't care about that, unsubscribing does two things. First of all, it gives you an exit survey.
Mm-hmm.
Both games, as much as they might say take breaks, as much as they might say people who don't like our game are welcome to leave, as much as they may or may not communicate that, both games like the fact that they still have jobs. And that comes from active subscribers, not used to be subscribers. And so both games have an exit survey. If you turn off your subscription, it's going to ask you why. That's a benefit. If you feel unhappy with the game, one of the best things you can do is say, I am taking away my money, and here's what you would need to do to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if you cancel your subscription, that's an advantage. The next thing it does is it gives you a chance to move into an adjacent game and have a whole new wave of content. Final Fantasy canceled its Ultimate for the second half of this expansion, which means people who've been in Final Fantasy all of Shadowbringers, who are into hardcore raiding, actually are running into the same content drought that WoW players did.
Mm-hmm.
People who cleared all of E12 and they're done, and they cleared Diamond Weapon Extreme on the first day and got them out. If that's all you like doing in 14, other than MSQ, you've got 5 hours of MSQ to do, 2 hours of MSQ to do at the end of May, and then you're done until this fall. But the advantage for this topic, what we're talking about today, is should WoW players consider jumping into 14,
yes,
at least to span the gap until 9.1, and who knows, maybe you like it and you stick around long term. I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is absolutely. The free trial is massive. The free trial gets you all the way to level 60. You could play your first 100 hours in this game totally for free, easily. That gives you a feel for the basics of the combat system. I will say, while it is one of the larger free trials in any paid game, it actually does not do the combat system justice, because you're going to spend the first half of that time in content where you have less than a full set of skills on a global cooldown that's 5 times longer than WoW's, and you're not going to have the off the globals unlocked to make that a more intriguing combat experience. So I would just give that warning to anybody coming from high-end WoW that the combat is going to feel very easy for the first half of that free trial experience.
So I got WoW, obviously, and Blizzard has a massive budget, one that pales in comparison to what 14 has. And Yoshi P has commented publicly that he wishes that he had their budget. And it's like, I cannot, yep, absolutely makes complete sense in that regards. For the WoW player making the jump, I think there's a positive and a negative. I think a positive sense is that especially if it had it in massive bulk, if all of a sudden you look on Twitch, if you look on stream charts, MMO population, all of a sudden you say 40% of WoW left, and 14 now has 30 million players, or 40 million players, like you see a clear transfer of power. I think the positive sense that sends a clear message to Blizzard, like, yeah, there is a clear piece of competition that's willing and to take that sub from you and move it over here in that regards. So that's a positive, because I think on that feedback they can actually go look at numbers. If it is Activision's fully in control of Blizzard in this regards, money is king, capital is king, and it means they would either do one of two things in my mind: say, hey, how can we fix that? What's the core problem? Oh, its patches are taking too long. Okay, what does it take to fix that? Let's either throw money at it, or it has them, you just say, like, all right, it's not worth our investment. We're going to go do something new. On the downside, on the positive side on 14, it's obviously you get more players, more subscribers, more payers, more money, maybe a bigger budget. But is there a negative impact on the 14 community that you could see by just a massive rush from WoW players? Because that's something you were talking about on stream.
So xenophobia is just a natural human trait. And it's something that ideally education and something works to curb, where we realize people living differently than us doesn't mean that they're worse than us, but it's a natural defense mechanism within the tribal portion of human beings, where when somebody comes in that does something different than us, well, I got to where I am by doing the best of all options. So if they're different than me, it must be worse, right? And so there is this logical side of our brains that that actually, if you follow it too far, it becomes illogical in nature. And we start to assume anybody different than us is worse than us. And there are plenty of people who dislike the WoW community. They dislike aspects of the WoW community based on past experiences. They dislike it based on the experience with a streamer. Maybe it was a single time that they actually gave it a shot. Maybe it was where they came from. It doesn't matter, but the long-term problem is that they either dislike the game or the community or both. And for people that like that, feel like that, I think that I can't speak today. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? All right. So if the plan today is to say, I hope WoW dies. I hope WoW fails, burns into the ground. They deserve it. They're terrible people. Well, let's assume that that's true. Let's assume that's an objectively measurable scientific fact. Okay. Then do you hate the people that play it? Yes. All people that play it are objectively terrible people. Fine. Let's just take that right at its face value. No need to look any deeper. You said so, must be true. Terrible people play a terrible game. Wishing for that game to die, where do you think they're going to go? They're not just going to go, well, my game got shut off. Party's over. I don't like games anymore.
Some people would, like, to be fair, like when there are active people who play WoW who aren't or don't consider themselves gamers, who that is their game. But like, I wouldn't say that's the vast majority, but I just know that was something really mind blowing. That it's like, oh, you never played games before? You played WoW? You've never played another game besides this? Fascinating. Go ahead, Chris.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. There will be some that just leave gaming altogether, which is not good for us as a community.
Right.
But there will also be ones that look for a new game. So I think to the point, will it change the 14 community? Yes. You and I live in North Texas. We live in the DFW area. DFW has done an immense job to invest in its infrastructure and to invest in employers such as Toyota, Liberty Mutual, and State Farm relocating here from other states. They have brought in thousands of jobs, and a portion of those jobs has been existing people within those large companies transferring here as transplants from other states. California being a major driver. At one point 2 years ago, we had 100 families a week moving into DFW from California specifically. That is an absurd rate of growth for a single metroplex. California, they were moving here from large urban centers in California, which are typically liberal leaning in a political system in the United States, as opposed to the more rural parts of the state. They were moving into Dallas, Fort Worth, where as soon as you get outside of city limits, becomes also more conservative leaning. There are people who felt the Dallas and Fort Worth city center expand to take on these new people, and the culture changed. Right? What we valued as far as where our tax dollars go, the number of avocados we put on things, important things changed. It doesn't feel good. If you liked the way things were, change does not always feel good. So will the game change? Yes. But I don't own this game any more tomorrow than I owned it the day I got here. And so you can't sit here and say, I hope this game never changes. I hope this game never grows. This game's been around 7 years. My 7 years, I've changed since I got here. So thank God the game isn't the same, because I think I probably would have left. The game is changing, and that's a good thing. That doesn't always mean every single change is going to feel good. It doesn't mean always every single change is going the exact way you would drive the ship. That's just something we're going to have to address. It doesn't matter whether it's because we're welcoming in WoW refugees or not. New players have to come from somewhere. Would we prefer people who've never played a game, don't know how to read tooltips, have never known a rotation, don't have any inventory management, don't have any party etiquette, don't know what a tank, a heal, or DPS is? Is that better than a player who at least comes from a similar game where they know that a healer should heal and then cast DPS if they have spare downtime, knows that gear is important, knows that they should know how a trial fight works at a high level of difficulty prior to entering, unless the party says they're doing it blind? Is that worse? It's not that black and white. WoW is in a weak moment. It is a great time to try other games. New World this year, PSO2 New Genesis, Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, ESO, EVE Online, Old Republic. Try something. What do you have to lose? Time in a game that doesn't have a patch? That's such a low risk. Now, I'm not unsubscribing from WoW because the content that I want to clear in WoW right now has nothing to do with 9.1. So it doesn't matter to me that 9.1 is delayed. But if you are not in that boat, yes, I would absolutely consider jumping to Final Fantasy XIV. I would get to know what's different. You're going to find that it's a lot of the same features, just done a little bit differently. It's going to seem familiar but different. You'll pick it up quickly, and there is a ton of fun to be had at max level.
The one of the things I think is interesting just about it altogether, because you and I both very well know that I guess there's no perfect
the house
community.
While I ranted.
You did? Oh, it sold? Housing Savage continues. Well, like you said, like 14 isn't a perfect experience. Oh no, guys, the house sold. So if you guys have been tuning in live, no, Chris has been trying to buy a house, and it's been horrible. Anyway, so on that note, there's a gatekeeping aspect to any game. And it's very interesting to see. And you and I both very well know, and we've seen kind of the negative aspects of 14 in that regards. What I would say is encouraging that is that as people drive in to experience this game, whether they come from WoW or not, whether they come from another game or not, I think it benefits. I think the benefits outweigh the disadvantages. Like, back to your analogy, obviously, with the state of Texas, it's like more jobs. People are creating things. Quality of life goes up. Obviously, like, disproportionately, in every way. This is the real world. But in a video game, that aspect, being able to sit down and say, wow, 14 has really grown. We've gotten more servers, more data centers, more features, and Yoshi P and the team is able to actually have an increased budget. So ultimately, we all win. Maybe to a point where I think what I would say is that, like, we can't prove this yet, but if that ever came to be, and the WoW player or any other refugees from any game finds a place to enjoy and sticks around and continues to play, like if there's a point where we ever get 3 ultimates in a single expansion, that the community can look and say, yeah, look what happened. Like the game population grew by 50%, and look what we end up getting for it. I think one of the things that common veterans...
How you get a third ultimate.
Right. I think
WoW players coming over is how you get a third ultimate.
Right. And I think essentially when we look at it, like the community should be on more inviting rather than more who can and cannot play this game, because ultimately if Square Enix wins and they're making money and the game is growing, you might get some stuff you like, you might not get some stuff you like. Yes, the culture will change in certain ways, but the culture is going to change whether you gatekeep or not. There's no one individual or group of people are going to be able to kind of help stem that. You can kind of protect it from within, but ultimately I would say go nuts, have fun, and hopefully you enjoy the ride. But I was really interested because, like, the fact that you brought up the negative impact on stream, I was like, that's something kind of really to talk about, because it would happen. There would be a culture change, and it might not be something to your liking. But I don't think that the risks of having a massive population jump into the game itself would outweigh its disadvantages. But who knows? That's just my thoughts on that regards. Chris, did you have a hidden phrase? Because I thought I caught a hidden phrase. I wasn't so sure.
What did you think it was?
Well, there was one about avocados, and then there was another one about, what was it? I forgot. It was something else.
No, it was actually when I stumbled over my own words. I was wondering how I was going to introduce it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't find my words. It was how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood.
Right.
I didn't know how that was going to fit in, and then I couldn't find my words, and I was like, well, you would do verbal exercises to hit restart. So
there it is.
just use it. No, the avocado thing was totally organic.
Yeah, well, like you said the woodchuck thing, and I was like, okay, I need to make a note of that because I think I found it. And then I was like, and then all of a sudden you start talking avocados. Chat starts going off on avocados. And they say they want it on a shirt, so maybe you'll contact our artist and see if we can't get a work to game. How many avocado? Like, I don't know which phrase they tuned in on. I think it was a lot of people enjoying.
Well, I don't want WoW players in 14. They're gonna bring avocados.
No, avocados. All right, guys, this has been us for for this topic. As you always, please feel free to suggest topics for Chris and I to dive in and attack. And hopefully, what we'll start to do is we'll see a couple things make a return here in the next couple of weeks here. But anyway, guys, if you missed yesterday's video, we talked about our schedule for FanFest. So much coming up on the channel. Hopefully, if you're new here, you hit subscribe, you get ready to buckle up for a lot of exciting things that are going to continue all the way forward. But for Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching, and we hope to see you in our next video. But until then,
take care.